I lost my job a few weeks ago. I was an administrative assistant for almost 30 years. Then one day, I was told I was too old. I felt like my whole life was upended. To regain some stability, I moved into an old apartment complex. It was charming in a faded sort of way. The place creaked when I walked down the hallway. The wallpaper peeled, and everything felt worn out, just like me. On my first night, I noticed a framed photo in the corner of the living room. It must have been left by the last tenant. I picked it up. It showed a group of women around my age all smiling together. But as I stared, something felt off. Their smiles seemed twisted, their faces a little too unnerving. I put the photo back down, telling myself I was just being silly. The next day, I tried to feel normal. I can't remember what I did, but I know I felt uneasy. I could hear voices outside my apartment, soft but still audible. They sounded like distant whispers, like laughter trailing off. I thought it was just the neighbors. Still, it left me with a racing heart, but I brushed it off. That evening, I stood in front of the bathroom mirror. I was brushing my hair when I glanced at my reflection. For a split second, my face looked strange, almost unrecognizable. It left a knot in my stomach. I turned away, blaming it on my mind playing tricks. Later, while washing my hands, I noticed something written on the bathroom mirror. It was in red lipstick and read, "Lost time." A wave of dread washed over me. I didn't remember feeling this anxious when I first arrived. That night, I dreamed about the women from the photo. Shadows cloaked their faces as they circled around me. I could feel their gazes on me heavy and tight. Were they angry? Regretful? I wasn't sure, but it made me feel suffocated. When morning came, I convinced myself it was just a bad dream. But the next night they returned. Then again. They remained silent but watched closely. I wondered what they wanted from me and what had happened to them. Were they trapped here? One night, as I lay in bed, I heard whispers again. This time they sounded close, almost surrounding me. I felt frozen in fear, as if something was right beside me. Was it all in my head? Or was there something more? I needed to find out what had happened to those women. The next night, the whispers were louder. My heart raced as I struggled to breathe, anxiety clawing at me. I felt as if the walls were closing in. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was running out of time. It was becoming unbearable. Then I heard a voice whisper my name in the dark, and I froze in place. I lay there, my heart pounding, as the voice echoed in the room. It was soft, but still cut through the silence like a knife. "Anna," it called. The whisper felt intimate, as if it were meant for me alone. I wanted to sit up, to scramble away from the darkness, but my body wouldn't obey. I felt paralyzed by fear. The whispers swirled around me, louder now, a chaotic mix of familiar and foreign tones. At that moment, I couldn't bear it anymore. I forced myself to sit up, breathing heavily. The shadows danced in the corners of my room. I grabbed my phone, the glowing screen providing a small comfort against the oppressive darkness. Glancing around the room, I half expected to see faces peering out from the shadows, but I was alone. I decided it was time to find answers. I needed to figure out who the women in the photograph were and why they haunted me. The next day, I forced myself to step out into the world. I wandered through the old apartment complex, hoping to meet someone who might know the history. My neighbor's door was slightly ajar, so I knocked softly before pushing it open. "Hello?" I called out. Inside, the place looked lived in but cluttered. Papers were strewn across the coffee table, and a low hum of an old radio played in the background. A woman with gray hair, piled in a messy bun, looked up from her seat. Her blue eyes held a spark of recognition. "Are you new here?" she asked. "Yes," I replied, forcing a smile. "I'm Anna. I just moved in a few days ago. I was wondering if you could tell me about the previous tenants?" Her gaze darkened for a moment. "Oh, the women? They came and went like shadows." My stomach tightened. "What do you mean? They were not the same when they lived here." She leaned closer, lowering her voice. "There were rumors. They were part of some sort of club. Something was off about them." "Off?" I repeated, Unexplainable things happened. Whispers, ghostly figures. People said they would see them roaming the halls late at night. I know I did. My pulse quickened. What happened to them? They just vanished. I felt a chill wash over me. The weight of her words sank in. Vanished? My voice trembled. Some say they're still here. That they're trapped in this place, waiting for something. Waiting for what? I was feverishly trying to keep my voice steady. The woman shook her head. I don't know. But you shouldn't stay too long. She warned, her brow furrowing. There's something about the past that they don't want to let go of. I thanked her and stepped back into the dim hallway. I was more confused than ever, and there was a sinking feeling that I was becoming part of whatever story this place held. That night, I braced myself for the whispers, but I felt drawn toward the window instead. As I looked out, my breath caught in my throat. There, illuminated by a flickering streetlight, stood the silhouettes of the women from the photograph. They watched me with hollow eyes. Then everything went dark. I gasped as I jolted awake. My room was drenched in darkness, the night still heavy outside. I struggled to steady my breathing, the weight of that chilling image still fresh in my mind. The women had been right there, no more than shadows on the street, but their presence felt so much more real. I reached for my phone, forcing myself to check the time. It was past midnight. I knew I had to find out more about what was going on. Feeling a sense of urgency, I threw on a jacket and crept out of my room. The silence of the apartment complex wrapping around me like a thick fog. I decided to head back to my neighboress. The old woman might have more to say, even if it was the middle of the night. As I tiptoed down the hallway, each creak of the floorboards echoed in my ears. It happened again, the whispers. They started softly, then grew louder, more insistent. My heart raced as I paused outside her door. Anna, they called just like before, pulling me closer. It was as if something was trying to pull me into the shadows. But I couldn't turn back now. My curiosity drove me forward. I knocked tentatively. Nothing. After a few moments, I pushed the door open. The room was dark, the television turned off, and only the faint glint of moonlight filtered through the curtains. "Hello," I whispered, my voice shaky. No response. I stepped inside, hoping to find her. The air felt thick with unspoken words. As I scanned the room, my eyes landed on the coffee table. It was cluttered with papers, but one item caught my attention, a small, brass key. It shimmered under the sliver of moonlight, as if it were alive. Before I could process what I was seeing, a whisper came from behind me. "Anna," it said, softer now, almost pleading. I spun around, but the room was empty. The weight of the key felt heavy in my hand. I could sense it was important, but to what? Was it meant for a door or a box long forgotten? I knew I had to find out, if not for myself, then for the women who were trapped in this place. I left the apartment, clutching the key tightly. There had to be a place in this complex that matched it. I moved toward the far end of the hall, where a door marked with peeling paint stood silently. There was an old padlock on it, almost swallowed by rust. My heart raced as I inserted the key. Would it work? Clicked. The door creaked open, revealing a dark room beyond. My heart pounded as I stepped through, the whispers growing louder. "Anna," they urged, echoing in the confined space. That S, when I saw it, a flicker of movement in the darkness. Shadows, dancing and swirling, morphing into those same women I had seen before. They were reaching out to me, and then everything went dark. I blinked, and my surroundings began to take shape again. The darkness faded slightly, revealing the same room but in a different light. The women stood before me, their features clearer now. They were pale, with solemn eyes that bore deep sadness, like they carried untold stories. "Help us," one of them whispered. I realized it was the woman I had seen on the street, her face a mask of despair. Her outstretched hand seemed to pull at my heart, urging me to step closer. "Who are you?" I stammered, unsure of what I could possibly do. Their presence felt both comforting and terrifying. "Never forget." Another voice chimed in, and I turned my head to see a third woman, her expression filled with urgency. "You must remember. The truth is buried here. Before I could ask more, the shadows shifted again. The air grew heavy, and the room shifted around me, spiraling into a whirlwind of memories. I stumbled back, trying to regain my footing. Then I saw it a moment in time, like a scene playing out in front of me. The same apartment complex, but years ago. I saw myself a younger version, filled with laughter and light, sitting at that very table. My heart raced as the image of another woman appeared beside her, laughing and sharing secrets. But then the laughter turned to silence. The snippet of my own past shifted into scenes of growing anger and arguments. Harsh words directed toward the woman I recognized as my mother. "Stop!" I cried out, trying to break free from the memories suffocating me. Shadows pressed forward, looking more like shackles than specters. "What is this?" She left. One of the women whispered softly, her presence suddenly more intense. "You didn't give her a chance. She is lost because of you. Please, let me go," I pleaded, feeling the weight of their accusations. I was drowning in shame. "I didn't know." "You must find the key," the first woman urged, her fingers pointing to the floor as she faded slowly, her outline blurring. "To set us free and to free yourself." The darkness thickened once more, swallowing their figures, until I was standing alone in the empty room. My heart pounded against my ribs. I felt the key burning in my hand as if it was waiting for something more. Around me, the whispers still chased the corners of the room. They were mad with urgency now. "Anna, Anna," they called, louder and more frantic. I had to know. I needed answers. I needed to understand what these visions meant and why I felt pulled toward this haunting past. I rushed back towards the door I had come through, retracing my steps carefully with a new purpose. Each whisper felt like a reminder. But just as I reached for the doorknob, I felt a chill sweep through the air. "Don't leave." A voice froze me in place. It was familiar, echoing with pain. I turned, and my breath caught in my throat. There, standing in the shadows, was my mother, the silhouette made of darkness. Her face shadowed but unmistakable. "Mom?" I whispered, my mouth dry, and then the door slammed shut behind me. The darkness wrapped around me, thick and suffocating. My heart raced as I stared into the shadows where my mother stood. Couldn't move. I didn't know if I wanted to. "Why are you here?" I finally managed to ask, though my voice trembled. The air crackled with tension. She didn't answer. Instead, her form flickered, like a candle struggling to stay lit. I could see her eyes, filled with pain and confusion. "Anna," she started, but then faltered. The shadows seemed to close in tighter around her, as if they were alive. "Please, just talk to me," I urged, feeling the desperation seep into my voice. "What happened between us? Why did you leave?" Her silhouette wavered, and I could almost see a hint of the mother I once knew, the one who held me close and made me laugh. "I never wanted to go," she said, her voice a fragile whisper. "You pushed me away." "No," I protested, the words bursting out of me. "I hated how you always tried to control everything. I was a kid." The shadows writhed, and she looked hurt. "You don't know what I was going through." I tried. Her voice trailed off, and I felt a surge of regret wash over me. Suddenly, the room around us shifted again, the walls melting away into a different scene. I found myself standing in a dim hallway of my childhood home. The wallpaper was peeling, and the air was heavy with dust. Felt familiar yet unsettling. "Anna," my mother's voice called from the other end of the hallway. I turned to see her, young and vibrant, standing in front of a closed door. "You need to see this." Curiosity ignited within me. I dashed down the corridor until I reached her. The door loomed before us, locked tight. "What's in there?" I asked, panting slightly. "The truth," she replied, her expression serious. "But you have to be ready to accept it." I hesitated, biting my lip. The words of the women echoed in my mind. "You must find the key." "What key?" "I don't know if I can handle what's behind that door," I admitted, fear creeping back in. "You must, Anna. There is freedom on the other side," she urged, stepping closer. "I can help you." I looked into my mother's eyes, seeing a flicker of hope mingled with sorrow. Maybe this was what I needed. I raised my hand nervously, feeling for the key I still clutched tightly. In that moment, everything went dark again. The hallway disappeared, and I was plunged into an unsettling void. I could hear whispers around me, calling out my name, growing louder and more urgent. Then, with a jolt, light flooded my vision. I found myself back in the room where it all started. I was alone, except for the rumble of the whispers, now frantic and chaotic, swirling around me. "Anna, help us," they cried, blending into a cacophony. My fingers tightened around the key. But then, through the noise, I heard a new sound. A door creaking slowly opened from somewhere in the vast darkness. I turned toward it, my heart racing. That S when I saw it, a flicker of light shining just beyond the threshold. I needed to know what lay beyond that door, but I was terrified of what I might find. What if it wasn't my mother waiting on the other side? I stepped toward the door, the flickering light drawing me in. With every step, the whispers faded slightly, but their urgency still buzzed in the back of my mind. "Help us," they echoed, a plea that felt as real as the ground beneath my feet. I reached the threshold, my hand hovering over the doorknob. It felt cold and foreign. I took a deep breath, pushing down my fear. Whatever lay beyond, I had to face it. I turned the knob slowly, and the door creaked open. A blinding light enveloped me for a moment, and then I stepped inside. I was greeted by a room that looked oddly familiar, the same dusty smell, the peeling wallpaper, and even the drapes that fluttered in a non-existent breeze. It was like being transported back in time, yet something felt off. "Anna," my mother's voice cut through the haze. She stood across the room, her back turned to me. I could see her clearly now, vibrant and alive. "You made it." "Made it to what?" I questioned, my heart racing. "What is this place?" "It's where everything began," she replied, turning to face me fully. Her eyes searched mine, filled with an intensity that made me shiver. "This is where I tried to protect you from the truth." "Protect me?" I shot back, frustration bubbling within me. "You left. You didn't protect me from anything." She flinched as if my words physically struck her. "I thought if I kept certain things hidden, you'd be safe." I was wrong. I looked around the room, confusion swirling in my mind. "What do you mean? What did you hide?" Suddenly, the walls began to ripple, morphing into images, flashes of moments I didn't recognize. A shadowy figure loomed in the corner. I squinted, trying to make sense of it. There was a man, but his face was obscured, and they were arguing, my mother's voice laced with fear. "Stop it," I yelled as I rushed toward the images. "What happened? Who is that?" "That was your father," she whispered, and the words struck me like a slap. "He wasn't who you thought he was." Before she could finish, the shadows surged forward, swallowing her words. The room spun around me, the walls vibrating with a deep, unsettling energy. I felt disoriented as the memories played out like a horror film on repeat. "No, I need to know," I screamed. "What did he do?" But the room distorted, and she began to fade, her form flickering like a dying light bulb. "You need to find the key, Anna. Only then will you understand." The echoes of her voice began to blur with the whispers around me, growing louder once again. Panic surged through me. "Wait, don't leave me." Then, everything went dark once more. A crushing silence enveloped me, and I was alone again, floating in the void. I gripped the key tightly, my breath rapid and shallow. Now I knew I had to find the truth, no matter what it took. Somewhere in this darkness was the answer, and I was ready to confront it. But just as I steeled myself, a cold presence brushed past me. I wasn't alone. I turned sharply, my heart pounding. "Who's there?" Silence. And then a low, menacing whisper slithered through the dark. "Anna, you shouldn't have come here." The whisper sent a chill down my spine. I took a cautious step back, my fingers tightening around the key. "Who are you?" I demanded, my voice trembling. The darkness shifted, oppressive and thick. "You're not meant to be here," the voice hissed again, echoing with a taunting edge. I could barely make out a figure materializing before me, a murky silhouette with no distinct features. I need to know what happened to my mother. And my father, I shouted into the emptiness, desperate for answers. You can't keep me from the truth. The figure laughed, a sound that vibrated through the void. Truth? A fragile thing, I senti it. Sometimes it's better to remain in the dark. Anna. Better for whom? I challenged. I could feel my determination rising against the fear. If I'm going to uncover this, I won. TB stopped. Then, surprised by my own courage, I lunged toward the silhouette. It flickered momentarily as if about to fade again. Where's the key? I shouted. What key? The room flickered back into view, revealing splintered wooden beams and cracked walls. The figure dissolved into shadows, leaving behind a small, glimmering object on the floor. It caught the faint light and sparkled like a forgotten treasure. I knelt down and picked up the object. It was a tiny silver key, much smaller than the one I had previously held, with intricate designs etched into its surface. What is this? I wondered aloud. I felt a sudden tremor beneath my feet, as if the ground was shifting. The walls trembled, and the pictures of my past began reappearing, swirling like a storm. My heart raced as I fought to keep my focus. Show me, I cried. Show me everything. The images swirled faster, revealing pieces of a narrative that felt like a jigsaw puzzle I needed to solve. I glimpsed my mother's face, drawn and weary, speaking to the shadowy figure again. I could hear snippets of their discussion, words like danger, they'll come for her, and it's not safe. I steeled myself against the onslaught of emotions. Suddenly, the shadows shifted, and among them, a face emerged. It was a man, gaunt and serious, with eyes that held a weary knowledge. Anna, he said quietly, you need to listen. I don't have time for riddles. I shouted, my frustration bubbling over. I'm here for the truth. Then you must go to the cellar, he said, pointing into the depths of the shadows. It's where you'll find what you seek, but beware, what you discover will change everything. The darkened room fell silent once more, leaving me alone with the key in my hand and the weight of unknown consequences hanging overhead. I had no choice but to trust this strange man's words. Hesitantly, I moved toward the indistinct doorway behind him, heart racing with both fear and resolve. As I stepped through the threshold, the ambient air shifted around me with a sudden, bone-chilling cold that wrapped around my spine. I took a deep breath, ready to face whatever awaited in the cellar. And then I heard a sound that froze me in my tracks, a low, mocking laugh creeping from the shadows behind. I turned slowly, the laughter scraping at my nerves like nails on a chalkboard. My heart raced as I scanned the dimly lit space behind me. Shadows danced along the walls, shifting and writhing as if alive. Who's there? I demanded, my voice barely a whisper. I felt smaller in that moment, the shadows pressing in around me. The laughter faded, but the oppressive silence only heightened my anxiety. The figure I had encountered moments ago was nowhere to be seen, leaving me feeling exposed. I gripped the silver key tightly, its cool surface anchoring me in this storm of uncertainty. I'm not afraid of you, I called out. Are you sure? The voice came again, distorted as if echoing from the depths of the cellar. Fear can cloud your vision, Anna. I took a cautious step forward, more determined than ever. I need to know the truth. The cellar loomed dark and foreboding. Each step I took felt amplified, the wooden floor creaking under my weight. I approached an old door at the far end, where a strange air of anticipation hung. The silver key felt heavy in my pocket, urging me to unlock whatever lay beyond. As I reached the door, my fingers trembled against the cold iron handle. I hesitated, doubts flooding my mind. What if I wasn't ready for whatever was behind it? Before I could think too much, I pulled the key from my pocket. It glinted dully, and as I fitted into the lock, a surge of adrenaline rushed through me. I turned the key, the mechanism clicking sharply in the silence. Then, with a shove, the door creaked open. An explosion of musty air hit me, thick with the sense of dust and decay. I stepped inside, the dim light revealing a cramped, cluttered space filled with old trunks and dusty furniture bowed under the weight of years. That S when I saw it, an ornate wooden chest tucked in the corner. It was unlike anything else in the room, emanating an aura of something important. Curiosity drew me closer, and I knelt down to inspect it. The chest had intricate carvings, much like my new key. As I reached for the latch, a sudden noise came from behind me. My heart dropped as I spun around. The shadows shifted once more. "You should leave that alone," someone said, the voice smooth and chilling. I stood frozen, my pulse hammering in my ears. "What do you want?" I asked, the words barely escaping my mouth. The figure stepped forward, its features still obscured by darkness. "You're not ready for the secrets it holds. Some truths are better left undiscovered." But I had come too far to turn back now. I shook my head defiantly, uncertainty flaring in my gut. "No, I need to know." Then, the darkness enveloped me again, the figure dissipating into the shadows. I was left alone with the chest and the weight of my decision. My heart raced as I reached for the latch once more, knowing I was crossing a threshold of no return. And before I could open it, I heard a soft whisper that sent terror shooting through me. "They're coming for you." I hesitated as that whispered warning echoed in my mind. "They're coming for you." Was it just a trick of my imagination? My pulse quickened, drowning out the silence. I had to know what was in the chest, but now I felt a pressing urgency over my curiosity. I opened the latch. The lid creaked loudly as if protesting my intrusion. Inside, I found a collection of yellowed papers and a small, glass vial filled with a dark liquid that swirled ominously. I glanced over my shoulder, expecting the figure to reemerge, but the room remained still, heavy with the weight of secrets. What was the significance of this chest? I pulled out the papers and studied them under the weak light. They were old documents, some dated over 50 years ago. My heart sank. Each page seemed to reveal more about a long-buried history filled with names I recognized only in passing my family's names. "I need to warn you," the voice called again, softer this time but more insistent. "You don't know what you're dealing with." I shoved the papers back inside the chest, suddenly feeling the weight of my decision more than ever. My family? What did they have to do with any of this? The hairs on the back of my neck prickled. I had to leave, the walls felt like they were closing in. I stood up and turned to exit the room when I saw the faint glow of light flickering beneath the far wall. Curiosity battled with panic. Without another thought, I moved closer to the flickering light. As I got near, I noticed it was a small crack in the wall. The soft golden glow pulsed rhythmically, as if breathing. "Anna," the voice came again, now sharp and urgent. "They're almost here. You have to make a choice." I stepped back, the flickering light casting eerie shadows. I felt trapped between the chest and the wall, the weight of my past colliding violently with the uncertainty of my future. Who were they? I needed answers, but it felt as if something dark was creeping closer from the shadows, ready to envelop me. Then, the ground suddenly trembled beneath my feet. I stumbled, my heart racing as the light grew brighter, illuminating the entire cellar. Panicking, I dashed toward the door, desperate to escape. I had to warn my family, but how could I when I didn't even understand the dangers? As I reached for the door handle, I heard a voice behind me, chilling and commanding. "You can't run from this. You were chosen, Anna." The light from the crack pulsed one last time before everything went dark. My breath caught in my throat as I turned around. I was not alone. "Who are you?" I shouted into the darkness, desperate for answers, my voice echoing through the silence. And just like that, the shadows shifted again, revealing a figure, their face just visible in the dim light. My skin crawled as recognition washed over me. It was someone I thought I would never see again. I stood rooted to the spot, my heart racing as the figure emerged from the shadows. It was my mother, but not the vibrant woman of my childhood. This version of her looked older, more worn, and her eyes were hollow, consumed by an agony I hadn't known was possible. "Anna," she began, but her voice broke, lost amid the chaotic whispers swirling around us. "Mom," I gasped, the weight of our past crashing down on me. What's happening? They're closing in. You must decide. She warned urgently, her eyes darting to the dark corners of the cellar. Decide what? A part of me wanted to run to her, to pull her into an embrace, but the other part held me back, wary of the darkness that lingered at the edges of my vision. What are you? I gestured toward the shadowy shapes gathering around her, the same ones that had tried to pull me into their depth. The shadows laughed, a cold sound that danced on my spine. She's not what you think, Anna. Choose wisely, they whispered, their voices weaving in and out, turning into a haunting melody. Choose what? I pleaded, desperation clawing at my chest. What do you want from me? Remember the key, my mother said, her voice trembling. You're at a crossroads. Let go of your attachments or they will consume you. A heavy silence fell, and I felt the energy shift once again. The glowing crack in the wall pulsed rhythmically, drawing my attention. Felt alive, beckoning me toward its warmth. The truth waits for you there, Anna. Do you dare? But something about her words set off alarm bells in my mind. Is that the truth? Or is it just another trick? I retorted, the shadows seemingly leaning in, eager to hear my decision. I'm a living shadow of my former self, she murmured, her voice cracking, just as they are. We're all trapped here. You still have the opportunity to escape this fate. My heart raced as the shadows hissed around her, their whispers confusing and frantic. Stay with us, Anna, they implored. You don't want to be alone. Why do you want me to stay? I shouted, my voice echoing in the silence. What do you gain from my fear? We'll protect you. Another voice crooned, soothing yet eerie. You have to face the outside world, the pain of choice. Everything felt surreal, a tumult of old memories clashing with new fears. My gaze flickered between my mother and the crack in the wall. What's behind that light? What does it mean for us? Nothing good, she said with a strained expression, a hint of bitterness mingling with sorrow. The truth holds a cost, a heavy one at that. You don't want to become what I am. The shadows closed in closer, and I sensed the reality of her words slipping away. I could feel the pressure mounting. A choice was at hand, and the wrong one could bury me deeper into the darkness. Then I'll choose the truth, I said, surprising myself with my resolve. My hands trembled as I took a step toward the crack. I need to know who I am, what you hid. If you're a shadow, then maybe I can still find my way back into the light. Anna, wait! My mother's voice cracked with desperation, but I couldn't stop. I pressed against the crack, and a wave of warmth flooded over me. I didn't know what I'd find, but it couldn't be worse than living trapped in this exchange of sorrow. The light burst open, blinding and welcoming, and I felt my feet lift off the ground. The room spun around me, colors swirling as the dark shadows screeched and faded. As the light enveloped my senses, I felt both terrified and liberated. Would I ever see her again? Would I uncover all the secrets that lay behind the choices made in our past? And then, just before everything went white, I heard the hushed whispers one last time. You're forever marked by your choices. Then I was gone. When I opened my eyes, I was lying on the floor of my apartment, the early morning light spilling through the dusty window. Felt real, grounding. I rushed to the mirror, scanning my reflection, still me, unchanged, yet somehow different. The whispers lingered still. I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. Had I escaped the darkness, or did it follow me? I glanced toward the old framed photo in the corner, the twisted smiles of the women seeming to speak volumes. I moved through my days, rebuilt what I could of my life, but sometimes I still hear the echoes in the dead of night, and I wonder if I made the right choice. I guess I'll never really know.